Gail Fraser. I'm sitting in the Chester Theater, or Playhouse, and looking at all the renovations and realizing I've been around here for a long time. First time I probably came to this space was in the early 60s when I was bringing Bunch and Susie to the movies at the Canary Theater. The next time in my career in the theater, I was either here on the stage as an actress in the Chester Jesters or behind looking after lines that people forgot. So I'm quite comfortable at home in the Chester Theater. And I've come to share that many years with you for the years in the Chester Playhouse. Many people have been here for a few years, for 10 years, but I've been here since the early 60s, and I want you to move through those years with me and see how the Playhouse has grown since that time. I'm going to read this because there are dates here, and my memory's not as good as it used to be. So here we go. When I came to Chester in the late 50s, the Canary Theater, founded in 1938, was still very much a movie theater, but not the only means of entertainment in the village. Every family was now anxious to have a television set where they could watch the news and be entertained by sitcoms. Ken Corkum, and particularly Eric Redden, the techie of the two, realized the days of a movie house would soon be over. Ken, the entrepreneur of the duo, wasn't quite ready to quit. Ken had a property out on the Commons Road, and he created the Chester Drive-In Theater and Canteen. They operated in the summer for a few years. Eventually, that died as well, a natural death, leaving only cartoons for Saturday afternoon in the Canary, and then only the odd Christmas movies they showed for the school children in the early 60s. The doors of the Canary Theater were closed, we assumed forever. However, in 1963, the first year of the Chester Jesters, the beginning of a true theater and entertainment center in the village of Chester began, both for the people and of the people. That summer, Dick Burwell, a professor of English at an American university, and his wife Tika Paree, whose family had been regular summer visitors in Chester for a goodly number of years, decided the empty building in the heart of the village was missing its role as a center of entertainment for Chester. They decided to attempt a resurrection. The Chester Jesters Theater was born. Dick, fondly known as The Broom, created, wrote, directed, and produced a play every summer for, I think, about 5 years. Tika was the behind-the-curtains worker and supporter, as she had been in the village long enough to know and find people who would be interested in acting, working, producing, and supporting such a venture. It was designed as a project in which the entire village could play a part, and we all did. The Jester presentations also included a live audience, and that audience was up there in the balcony very often, which is now gone, I see. They felt they were part of the live audience and part of the Playhouse, and they wanted to be part of the scene, which they did with a fair bit of noise, but we never paid any attention to them. We just carried on. They were part of the scene, but not in the scene. I think that it's important for people living and working in Chester in 2021 to understand what Chester was like during the days of the Chester Jesters and for some time thereafter. In 1962, Chester Municipal High School was built and was opened in the fall of the year, providing classes for grades 6 to 12. In its first year, it started with grade 6 rather than the usual grade 7, to allow for an easier transition for students moving from the small rural schools that had served each of the small communities between Mahone Bay and Hubbard's, where each community had its own primary school. Before 1962, students who wished to continue in further education had to come to Chester to the school that went to grade 11 at that time. When the new school was built, it provided not only labs, a library, and separate classrooms for separate subjects, but also a gymnasium with a stage, which could be converted to a theater if or when it became an integral part of the school life. This would have been the first opportunity for most students to have had a stage on which they could perform. At this time, the municipality also began to hire younger teachers, often straight out of university or normal college, and with quite different educations and backgrounds than former staff members. To give you some comprehension of the breadth and depth of this change, you should understand that the majority of the students at CMHS in 1963 had rarely, if ever, traveled as far as Halifax. There was a newspaper, the Progress Enterprise, which was big on who had visited the house during the weekend and what was served, and very rarely contained any provincial, Canadian, or foreign news. Few homes had TVs, and I doubt very few, if any, students had ever seen a stage play or had performed on a stage themselves. I remember when hiring was taking place for the new school. Probably by then I was getting close to being on the school board. One of the criteria for remaining hired was whether the applicant planned to live in Chester or very close by, and what kinds of after-school programs were they be interested in leading. Oh yes, and there was always the question, were they married? And what did their spouse do? And how would that person be able to contribute to this community? Obviously not the kind of question that a board would dare ask today, but it was the one question that would have a huge influence on both the future and history of Chester and the Chester Playhouse. In the years between 1963, the first year of the Chester Jesters, and 1984, the founding year of the Chester Theatre Council, CTC, the village of Chester had changed quite dramatically. No pun intended. These changes were almost evident in the fields of education, entertainment, the arts, and permanent residence. The changes were very much the result of the intentional hiring of a younger teaching staff at the new school and the arrival of year-round village residents, usually young professionals with young children who had moved to the village of Chester to live and to work. After the Chester Jesters retired, the Canary building lay dormant for a number of years until it was purchased, renovated, and renamed the Leading Wind Theatre. It was owned by Leo and Dora Velleman, who established a theatre group, Canadian Puppet Festival, that specialized in puppet productions. Although they produced a number of entertainments, and the children in the village were sometimes included as both helpers and audience, it was not an integral part of the village of Chester, despite its central location in the village. The Vellemans retired in 1983. In 1984, the Chester Theatre Council was founded and ordered to preserve the Canary Theatre itself in the very center of the village, with a hope that it would be eventually a center for entertainment in the municipality of Chester. The mission of the CTC in 1984 was to foster, promote, encourage, and develop the performing arts, and to maintain a community arts facility within the municipality of Chester, which it has worked very hard to do over the years. Most, if not all, members of the CTC at that time were come from a ways, not local people brought up in Chester. Most of the CTC members were young, often with children, and often drawn to Chester because of the new school when it first opened in 1962. By 1987, the year in which Christopher Ondaatje purchased the theatre building, and leased it to the council, the population of the village of Chester had changed quite drastically since 1962. The CTC was very proactive in their decision-making. They sponsored touring companies, rented the building out for income, and provided a venue for the Chester Theatre Festival. The Chester Theatre Council was beginning to grow into its mission. The theater's name was changed to the Chester Playhouse. Members of the CTC and the Chester Drama Society, two analogous groups, were responsible for the seating renovations and upgrades in the village, or rather the upgrades in the building that year. Most of the actual work was done by the members of those two groups. In 1992, the Ondaatje family donated the building to the CTC, and the following year, major renovations were carried out. The Chester Playhouse had truly become the center for the arts, entertainment, performances, and important functions, not just the village of Chester, but for all of the municipality. Before I move on, I want to extend a huge thank you to all CTC and Chester Drama Society members who were active during those very difficult growth years, and to many of you who remain wholehearted, active supporters of the Chester Playhouse, even to this very day. You all know who you are, as do many of us. You changed this building from a center of entertainment to the center of all things that make us an engaged village, who work happily and well together. You created a venue, the Chester Playhouse, in the heart of Chester. Not only a stage, but you created a wonderful way of life. I want to mention some of the groups who have benefited from this growth. Chester Ballet School, the Chester Brass Band, Chester Municipal High School, of course, and the Chester Playhouse Summer Schools, as well as touring productions, performers, and musicians. School and special performances that were written to display the Chester way of life had always been big hits at this theater. I want to thank all our early CTC and Chester Drama Society members and our benefactors. This is also an opportunity for me to thank and mention two people in particular, Sir Christopher Ondaatje and Georg George Namaskari. In all the years, I have never known either of them to say no in a time of need at the Chester Playhouse. Thank you to both of you. 1999-2000 were years when Joan Clether and I were responsible to the CTC for fundraising and managing another major renovation of the Chester Playhouse, which created better facilities and spaces for live performances. Since that time, the Playhouse has just grown and improved. Before I close, I want to mention the Alexander Fleming Patilla Memorial Foundation, which was established by the Patilla family in support of the Chester Playhouse Youth Center programs in memory of their son Alex, whom they had watched mature and benefit from his participation in the Playhouse Youth Theater during former summers in Chester. A small board was established consisting of Jim and Sue Patilla, Sue Taylor Foley, and myself to both create the foundation and fundraise for the same. The foundation has grown and has now become an integral part of the Christopher Ondaatje Theater Foundation. The youth program also prospered and grew even more exciting under the capable leadership of Cynthia Myers, now for a number of years. Enough of history, and now a celebration of the renovations that are reaching completion at the Chester Playhouse today. This is the biggest and most extensive and will no doubt be wonderful for years to come. Our thanks to the present CTC board, who are all very generous donors of both dollars and times, and the wonderful workmen who have created the newest iteration of the Chester Playhouse. Many thanks to all of you. To mark the completion of the 2021 renovations and to pay homage to the Chester Playhouse itself, I wish to give to Liz and Susan, the present co-chairs of the council, a ghost light for our newly renovated stage. The light will be a nightly reminder of all the people who have been instrumental in the concept, the work, and life of Chester Playhouse as we know it today. In theater history, the ghost light is a small lamp that shines throughout the night on the darkened stage when the theater is closed, to provide a light for any spirits who are visiting, enabling them to see and even perform and dance on stage. I hope this small light will not only light the way for the former actors and performers of the Chester Playhouse stage, but also for the ghosts of all our former audiences and supporters who will be able to see the light from their seats in the new house. I look forward to sitting in the newly renovated theater. Even my favorite seat has been in the balcony, is gone no longer in existence, and enjoying the first performance in our new stage, as well as any ghostly performances I may be able to enjoy in the future. Thank you for inviting me, Rachel, for sharing some of my years at Chester Playhouse with you.